What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react to some recent news about the US government. Sounds like we're meddling in Canadian affairs again. And this time is something to do with Alberta separatism. So I guess some members of the Trump administration are actually encouraging Alberta to leave Canada and join the United States, which, to be honest, is right on brand with everything that the US government has been doing so far. I mean, I guess Donald Trump and the US government probably thinks, like, if we can't have all of Canada as the 51st state, if we can't take all of you, we'll take Alberta. Or whatever we can get at this point. But I can't help but wonder what Canadians really feel and think about all this. And so today I want to check out this video by TLDR News and learn more about this whole situation. So let's take a look.
Last week, during an appearance on a right-wing podcast, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent raised eyebrows when he seemed to throw his weight behind the idea of Alberta, a province in Canada, seceding from the rest of the country. Speaking to the podcast host, Bessent said he'd heard rumours that they may have a referendum on whether they want to stay in Canada or not.
So this is some US government finance guy on a podcast, but to be clear, he is part of the U.S. government. He represents us, and he's saying stuff like this, talking about an Alberta referendum. This sounds familiar. This was like something that was getting discussed a little bit last year, I feel like a while ago. Not too long ago, because I've definitely heard of this idea before. That Alberta, I'm not sure exactly how popular the idea was, or how many people are in favor of it, or how realistic this is, but this referendum on Alberta leaving Canada, maybe, sounds familiar, actually.
And described Alberta as, quote, a natural partner for the United States. But while Bessent is almost definitely the most high-profile official in the Trump administration to muse about Alberta separatism, it's a pretty popular talking point in MAGA more widely. Trump's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, for instance, has talked about it quite a few times on his show. And last week, Republican Congressman Andy Ogles claimed that the people of Alberta would, quote, prefer to be part of the US because we are winning.
Oh my God. What a statement. That's like the most American freaking coded statement ever. Like, obviously, you want to be part of us because we are the winners. The winners. Just stop. Honestly, I'm kind of like at an impasse about what to think about this, because on one hand, if another country was like trying to encourage or coerce a U.S. state into leaving and joining them, I don't think I would be thrilled about that. I might even be offended by that. Or at the very least be like, you know what? Other country, shut up. This is our thing. Like, let us decide what we want to do. So, I don't know. I can't speak for the people of Canada or Alberta, and neither can this guy, for one thing. I think the people of Alberta would agree. The sentiment is they would prefer to not be part of Canada. That's a very presumptuous statement. And if I'm remembering this from last year, this idea had some traction, but it wasn't like made popular enough that it was going to happen. So that's what I'd be thinking, I guess, if this was happening in the U.S. So, for the most part, I guess my philosophy is, like, if this is something Canada wants to talk about, or discuss or think about. For the most part, we Americans, especially government people, just shut up and let Canada decide what you want to do.
Earlier this week, the Financial Times even reported that the Trump administration had held a number of secret meetings with an Alberta separatist group called the Alberta Prosperity Project, who are apparently seeking a $500 billion credit facility to help bankroll the province if they win an independence referendum.
Huh? Secret meetings? What? The U.S. government is having secret meetings with this members of the Alberta separatist movement, or you want $500 billion, or it sounds sketchy, and I really need to just understand how serious or realistic this is and how popular this is to truly get a good grasp on how I feel about it. As an American, I really don't know what the overall sentiment is about this in Canada, where it really matters.
So, in this video, we're going to take a look at the history of Alberta separatism, why the Trump administration is apparently taking an interest, and whether it could actually happen. Hint, the answer is probably no.
I feel like that's what they were saying last year. Probably no. And I'm sorry, but you can't help but think if Trump and the U.S. government are egging this on, it's not for the good of Alberta. Or I don't know. Who can say for sure with these things, but you just gotta feel at this point, with everything that we've said and done against Canada, this does not have a holistic motivation. The motivations are very questionable here for the US encouraging this.
More. So let's start with a bit of context, because Alberta separatism actually has quite a long history. Arguably, the first push for separatism came way back in the 1930s during the Great Depression. While Alberta is today quite a rich province, thanks largely to its booming oil industry, back then it was pretty poor, with a mostly agrarian economy.
Okay.
Canada was hit hard by the Great Depression, but things were particularly tough in rural provinces like Alberta, both because it arrived at the same time as an acute drought that crippled agricultural output, but also because global trade collapsed with the Depression.
Wow. This was 1930s, they said? I didn't know this was a serious topic of discussion before last year. I didn't know that. Maybe this is more serious than I thought. Of course, there's the Quebec separatist thing, where Quebec is voted on leaving Canada twice, right? And now Alberta, maybe? I don't know. I mean, here in the United States, when Obama was going to be elected president, I remember Texas wanted to leave. So, I can't say we have too much experience with this, but it just seems like some people really care about this, and maybe to some people it's a really serious thing, but not enough Canadians to actually make it happen.
And Canada's western provinces had previously relied heavily on exports. By the early 30s, something like 2/3 of the population in these provinces were unemployed, but the federal government refused to provide meaningful financial aid, with both Conservative Prime Minister R.B. Bennett and his Liberal successor W.L. Mackenzie King arguing that welfare was essentially a provincial responsibility. This didn't go down well in Alberta, and led to the creation of the Alberta Social Credit Party, who, after being elected in 1935, basically tried to alleviate the impact of the Depression by creating a new form of money to go alongside the Canadian dollar.
What? I didn't know. This is fascinating. So, in the 1930s, Alberta may have had a legitimate reason to be pissed off at the Canadian federal government, which kind of kick-started this whole thing, huh?
The federal government didn't like this parallel currency, and as tensions grew, some social credit politicians started pushing for secession. Astonishingly, then Prime Minister W.L. Mackenzie King didn't even seem that fussed by the idea, saying at one point, quote, "Alberta is part of the US desert area. I
Huh?
doubt if it will be of any real use again.
Whoa!
Nonetheless, the leader of the Social Credit Party, William Aberhart, thought secession was a step too far. Tensions
Whoa! That guy, oh my god. This prime minister didn't even really care. Oh my god.
between the provincial and federal governments persisted throughout the mid-20th century, largely because Alberta, which is pretty rural, was and is more right-wing than the rest of Canada.
Right. That's something I learned about last year. Alberta, like politically, is more right, more conservative. Is that fair to say? And like, so maybe there's a higher proportion of people who are like cool with the United States, or at least our conservative government, Donald Trump, right now. Like, maybe that's a thing.
You can see this in their voting history. The Social Credit Party, which morphed into the bog-standard right-wing party after the Great Depression, held power from 1935 to 1971, and were then succeeded by the centre-right Progressive Conservatives, who held office continuously from 1971 to 2015,
Okay.
the longest unbroken run in government in Canadian history.
Wow.
Conversely, however, the rest of Canada is pretty left-wing, which means that they often elect more left-wing governments at the federal level, with the Liberal Party holding power for most of Canada's post-war history.
Yeah, because I was trying to like understand why Alberta, like why of all the places in Canada, I understand Quebec feeling, you know, like maybe they're uniquely like want to be their own country, perhaps. You know, I don't know how serious that is, but it was very, very, very serious at least 2 times in history. Quebec, okay, makes sense. It's French. It's like a different culture. Alberta, I was just like wondering why Alberta, like, and it seems mostly to have to do with politics, right? Unless I'm missing something here, just like different political philosophy than most of the rest of Canada. I guess at least a lot of the right-leaning or conservative Canadians are located in Alberta, and okay, I guess it's kind of as simple as that in a way.
Nonetheless, even if more conservative Albertans found this state of affairs irritating, secession only really became a talking point in the 70s. This was both because the federal government, then led by Pierre Trudeau, was considered unduly left-wing by many Albertan conservatives.
Oh.
But it was also because of the rising price of oil, with global prices skyrocketing from $3 a barrel in 1970 to around $40 a barrel in 1980, largely
Okay.
thanks to the Arab oil embargo in 1973 and then the Iranian Revolution in 1979.
So it hasn't just been politics per se. Some of it is like financial situations or financial philosophies that they don't agree with.
This was obviously great news for Alberta's oil industry, which had really taken off in the late 40s and early 50s.
Oh, wow.
Alberta's oil boom turned the province into a net contributor at the federal level. In
Oh.
other words, it paid more in taxes than it received in federal money. But things really kicked off when the federal government took steps to assert more control over Alberta's oil resources, including via the 1980 National Energy Programme.
So now all of a sudden Alberta is very useful all of a sudden and has a lot of influence, power, generating all this revenue for Canada. I would see, now I can't help but think, is that why the United States really is wanting Alberta now, or egging on this movement? Obviously, I think it's safe to assume the United States is encouraging this, our government is, because they think it'll benefit us. That's not, I don't think that's unreasonable to assume.
Which imposed price controls on Canadian oil and tried to nationalise parts of Alberta's oil industry. This is probably when support for separatism peaked. A 1981 poll by the Canada West Foundation found that 49% of Albertans agreed with the statement that Western Canadians get so few benefits from being part of Canada that they might as well go it on their own. But then things calmed down when Trudeau was ousted by the Conservatives in 1984.
Okay.
That was until his son, Justin Trudeau, became Prime Minister in 2015. Many Conservative Albertans saw Trudeau as unpalatably left-wing and argued that his environmental regulations unfairly disadvantaged Alberta's oil and gas industry. They got
Wow. I mean, people must feel very, very strongly about this political stuff in Canada because it's like all over the world there are elections and political parties and that get voted in and out of power, but that doesn't mean when that happens and the person that you don't like is elected, it's pretty rare for part of your country to just simply want to separate and leave the country. That's this is extreme.
truly fed up when the Liberals, with the help of Donald Trump and his talk of annexing Canada, won a fourth consecutive term last year, overturning a 20-point deficit in the polls to beat Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. Right-wing Albertan separatists duly started pushing for an independence referendum, which would require them to collect at least 178,000 signatures, or
wow.
10% of eligible voters, before May.
That's what's ringing a bell to me. This sounds familiar. Collecting the signatures to try to get a vote going.
This has apparently drawn the attention of the Trump administration, both because, well, they presumably see Alberta separatism as a potential stepping stone to turning Canada into the 51st state, but also because Alberta is rich in natural resources.
Yes.
Not just oil and gas, but also stuff like rare earths, which the Trump administration is very keen on.
Oh, I have no doubt at all that the Trump administration would 100% accept Alberta into the United States and brag about it. So I have no doubt about that. And it sounds like we're basically openly saying that. So it's honestly, it's actually up to Canada or Alberta. Like they actually, if they wanted to, it sounds like it's an open invitation.
So could it actually happen? Could Alberta secede? Well, to be honest, no. Almost definitely not.
Okay.
Even if the separatists get the signatures, which is possible, polling suggests only 20 to 30% of Albertans support secession.
Oh. Couldn't they have put that at the beginning? That was one of my first questions for this whole thing. Was like, well, how many Canadians in Alberta like actually feel passionate about this? 20 to 30%? That's a lot. Like, that's a shocking amount of people to collectively agree they would secede from. That's a lot. But 80, you can't go against 70, 80% of the other Albertans who don't wanna. Yeah.
And this number will almost definitely fall once the idea of secession becomes associated with Trump or Alberta becoming part of the US.
Yeah.
Even if they did win, under the Clarity Act, the federal government would then have to determine whether the referendum was really fair, and if the Trump administration was actively meddling in it, they could plausibly say it wasn't. Furthermore, anti-secession advocates are now petitioning for another separate referendum, asking Albertans to reaffirm their support for Canada's territorial integrity, which could complicate things further. All in all, the chances of Alberta actually seceding seem pretty close to zero, and it's likely that, much like his previous attempts to interfere in other countries' domestic politics, Trump's meddling will hurt, not help. Now, if you've...
Indeed, that's a very succinct way of putting it. I have no doubt in my mind that Trump or people in the Trump administration genuinely would like to see this happen. But now I understand, based on the facts presented, it's not going to happen. There's people in Canada who feel this way, but the vast majority of Canadians do not. And that's all I needed to hear. So it's annoying that, once again, the United States is kind of like meddling in other countries' politics, other countries that have to do with like your sovereignty and your stuff like that. It's annoying. I don't know. It'd be nice for like 1 week for us to just like calm down and maybe like not do anything stupid. But anyway, this was fascinating. I'm glad to get a lot more clarity on this whole situation. Anyway. If you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts, especially if you're Canadian, especially if you're from Alberta. That'd be valuable to hear from. What you think about all this stuff. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canadian things that I've never seen before or don't know about, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.